I'm well, thank you. Greetings from New York.
Thank you very much for joining this DBK talk. We appreciate that you are having this time with us. This DBK talk is a recording during these uncertain times. We would like to thank you very much for your time.
A pleasure. It's a pleasure to be here with you today.
Thank you. So my first question is, as we know, you are head of the Blingby, and Blingby recently raised the importance of the developing of national branding. Please share your opinion on the importance of the national branding after the pandemic related to COVID-19.
I would love to. You know, the idea of nation branding or country branding before or after COVID is exactly the same thing. Countries need to manage their reputation. It's no different than a Coca-Cola bottle into a country. The difference being, of course, you impact people's lives, right? So what do we mean by nation branding or country branding? People externally, and as importantly, domestically, need to have a positive image of the country. And many times governments focus on external buy-ins and not as much domestic buy-ins. So this is in general for all countries. So it's important when a country is thinking about their brand to create this concept of a brand awareness. What is Kazakhstan? As a concept. What is the message of Kazakhstan? And then create the sense of consideration. When I think of Kazakhstan, externally and domestically, what do I think of? And then being able to create an action. Investment is what we're looking for, right, with externals, but domestic buy-in. Because when you have domestic buy-in, you have political peace, you have economic prosperity. So when you think about country management or brand management or nation branding, the key is to manage your reputation. But now, what does that actually mean? Country or nation branding typically exceeds the people who are in power. It continues, there's a longevity to it. So nations that have a lot of turnover domestically in terms of politics tend to have perhaps interruptive messages. But the benefit with Kazakhstan that has had a stable political environment is that it could actually control its brand image, i.e. its nation branding image, because it has had, if you like, a consistent political party in power. So that is a benefit for Kazakhstan, right? So think about it in this way. What is Kazakhstan for the internal and external audiences? We see Kazakhstan as a beachhead in Central Asia. We see Kazakhstan externally, right? And I have the benefit of knowing Kazakhstan almost as a native, but I'm a foreigner. So we see Kazakhstan as a beachhead in Central Asia, a stable geopolitical force in the region, a beacon of economic development. I mean, quite frankly, you look at the neighbors and you look at Kazakhstan, there's a lot to be proud of, okay? So in terms of that, Kazakhstan has been very successful in branding, right? But now let's come to the pandemic. This has changed a lot, right? Not only Kazakhstan, but in the world. So I think that what Kazakhstan needs to do is be very aware that today the domestic buy-in of policies and procedures is going to be extremely important because foreign investors, foreign audiences are going to look at cues of how the domestic audience feels they're being treated, how are they being taken care of, how are they being engaged for protection by the state. That will impact the reputation of the country. So I think that it's important for countries that want to have a positive branding during the pandemic and after, is that they had policies and procedures grounded in science, not popularity. Like, it's extraordinary that in the United States, where I am, people are refusing to wear masks. It's mind-boggling, right? It's it's not, you're not losing your freedom. You're actually helping with curtailing the pandemic. I think that countries that deny the extent of the impact of COVID or the pandemic in their reality are going to suffer reputationally. What they say, when the chickens come back to roost,
Yeah.
there will be a reckoning in economies, because the domestic audience will be upset. The domestic people will lose faith. That's in any country. So I think that countries that adhere to science, did not deny the impact of what was happening, and had a will to tackle, not to erase, not to minimize, not to diminish, but actually tackle the problems. We're true. We lack doctors. Okay, let's get them in. We lack medicine. Okay, let's get them in. We lack critical care beds. Okay, what can we do? So I think that in the pandemic, the most important thing is to manage the ability to curtail this pandemic or to minimize it with actions based on science, no deniability, no diminishing interest, and realize that when you invest in people, take care of them, the economy will come back. But if there are lingering concerns that the pandemic was not dealt with correctly, and then you have either rumors or fact of other viruses happening, that's going to affect the foreign view of a nation. And what's interesting is that now with technologies, for example, even with Bling By, the government can reach their domestic audiences through social media. And if they have to, they can clarify misinformation. I'm not going to say fake news, because I think that's been overused, and it's actually been used to hide, in fact, truths in some cases. But even with a technology like Bling By that you can use in social media, when you give a digital address, be it podcast, a live stream, or video, people can interact, and the government can say, actually, I'm sorry, that's not true. Or, yes, it is true, we have a shortages of doctors, and then you can click this tile, but let me tell you what we're doing. And then specifically, they can see per region, specifically, they can see the policies the government's doing. So part of nation branding today is not hiding from these different platforms, actually embracing effectively how to touch their audiences, right? And for example, the Bling By technology is going to be used by the United States Air Force to exactly brand themselves and provide additional knowledge layer so that you don't go away. So one of the most important things is that in this era of social media, of interactivity, just putting an ad out is not good enough anymore. People will go and search. The minute people go and search, you lose them. So when you have technologies that keep people contained, then you control one of the most important things, narrative design. And you can't have any branding without narrative design. And then the next step becomes, how do you preserve that narrative? How do you protect it from theme erosion? Since you brought up my company, companies like mine do exactly that. So I think that being able to control your narrative design, but you have to be truthful and protect against theme erosion in an era where anyone can search, anyone can get information away from you as a source, is extremely important. Today, narrative design is not just broadcast. It's not just, this is what I said. No, it also has to be narrowcast to the fact is, this is what I said, and here's additional information. And by the way, if you want additional information, go to this link, which I have easily put for you in mobile, in desktop, and laptop. And then you direct them to where you want further information to be, which hopefully is the accurate and truthful information.
I would like to move to the second question. Regarding the economic stability, the Development Bank is diversifying these economy spheres in foreign countries. They know Kazakhstan, it's oil and gas or raw material extraction. What kind of spheres or industries can Development Bank develop in future? And what is the role of Development Bank
The role of the development bank is extremely important. And I believe it has been successful in its role within the context of what its mandate is. Just as an aside, when I first came to Kazakhstan, which is a long time ago, we brought out, when I was at UBS, the first Eurobond deal for DBK. So just to remind the viewers, it is an honor to go from the first Eurobond to come and be on their board for all these years, right?
Yeah.
So I have intimate knowledge of the development of DBK, and I consider Kazakhstan one of my homes, as you know. I think that we need to understand that the role of DBK is extremely important. It's strategic. And DBK not only acts upon the domestic market by supporting industries under government mandate, those that they get funding, but it also is a flagship, talking about branding, because everything is weaved together, in the way in which foreigners see Kazakhstan. DBK has been consistently successful in issuing bonds. The first Eurobond came from DBK. It brought the corporate sector into the bond market. At that time, I was covering DBK in Kazakhstan from UBS. I then went into portfolio management. I was a hedge fund manager, and I actually would buy the securities. So I understand the entire investment cycle. And obviously, having been on DBK board in Kazakh Invest and et cetera, and having been the senior advisor to the prime ministers in many cases, and Samruk Kazina and et cetera. The role is extremely important domestically, and again, I want to say internationally, because if you think about it, DBK was able to place bonds in tenge that were oversubscribed in the Eurobond market by foreigners. Huge feat. That's a benchmark.
Yeah.
And that's because of the reputation, the brand awareness, and the fact that when you analyze DBK, you see it as a great proxy trade to the sovereign. So congratulations to DBK for achieving all of these things. Now, one of the important things that a government has to do, in addition to promoting industries that they point to, is to listen to the investment expertise of institutions like DBK and have them say, you know what, I actually think that we should perhaps get away from government-related companies and invest more into private companies. I mean, let's be very clear. DBK is in the front lines of investment. They're the ones talking to the borrowers. They're the ones that are analyzing the borrowers. Since we've been on the board, I've been on the board, I've seen an increase in the level of sophistication and analysis over these 5 years, and I'm extremely proud. So they should listen to the feedback from DBK that's saying these industries are working, these industries are not working. Obviously, we do not focus on the extractive industries. We need to develop the private industry. So why is that important? And I've been one of the people that have been championing the work of DBK to invest alongside foreigners in perhaps private sectors or non-government related sectors. But for that to happen, you have to build an investment case. You're right, the branding of the country is extractive industries, mining, oil, gas.
Yeah.
Obviously, an investor is going to look at where they believe they have the highest return with the minimum risk. We in Kazakhstan need to start creating a better messaging of other attractive industries so that we can turn around and attract interest while bringing domestic interest. If you want a structured economy, it's not going to work. If you want a diversified, sustainable economy, you must develop other fields of interest. These must be successful for reinforcement of investment. And you have to help local entities grow. Now, with that, you have to change, whenever possible, the domestic view. People need to buy Kazakhstan. You know how you say buy America? Buy American, buy Kazakhstan. Kazakhs have to start focusing and wanting to have industries that provide them some of the products that they buy abroad.
Yeah.
Substitute industries are important. Substitution industries. You should be producing your own juice. You shouldn't be buying it someplace else. You should be producing your own apples. You shouldn't be buying apples from another country. This, especially Almaty. So, so what I'm saying is you have to actually spur interest and, again, get the domestic audience willing to invest in Kazakhstan and not leave the country or invest out of the country because they believe it's not competitive. Because they believe that an entrepreneur with a dream is not really going to get funded. Well, they believe that I may get some capital, but there's no distribution. So what I believe would be very interesting is substitution industries, but also focusing on distribution channels so that young entrepreneurs or old entrepreneurs or small businesses can go to mid-size and larger. For that to happen, you have to help develop the product, right, through a distribution system to the end user. So I think that investing in private businesses that spur domestic development will create a more sustainable economy. And that also may mean green energy. When we talk about sustainable economies, people keep focusing on buzzwords, trends. Everyone, is excited about green energy. Of course, the environment's important. And I'm a huge pro-environment person. But there are also other industries that you need to look and develop that are as important today as it is to protect the environment. And I just think it takes very little imagination. It's more willpower for people to focus on that. And that, again, is part of that longevity. Investing in regions may outlast the governor. Investing on these changes may outlast an elected official. But you cannot develop a sustainable economy if you don't bet in your internal human capital and your internal talent. And if you don't, why would a foreign investor?
I've met so many investors who were saying, we have funds, we have money, we would like to invest. This country is as frontier markets. Yes, it's a developing country, but we see that you have great perspectives and stability and etc. But when I was looking for the project in a country, I've met a problem of finding a good quality project with a very good technical description. Investors I was contacting, they were saying that it seems great project, but they don't have any guarantee. Like we need guarantees from government. In this regard, what kind of advice would you give regarding the investment future of Kazakhstan?
I want to unpack a little things and clarify. Kazakhstan is not a frontier market. Okay. All right, so it's a country that even through the financial crisis, which I know intimately, was able to keep its investment grade rating. So let's be very clear. There may be industries within Kazakhstan that are considered to be frontier, okay? But not the country. So we are way ahead of other countries, and we should give the country an applause for that. Remember what I said in the beginning, Kazakhstan is seen as a beachhead. Kazakhstan is seen as the most stable political, if you like it, and economic country in Central Asia. It is a leader of the pack, and we should never forget that, okay? It should have a lot of pride and be, I'm happy about that. So that's number one thing I wanted to impact.
Okay.
Two, I want to say that when I talk about human capital development, it's not a put down to the country. In fact, I have met some of the most intelligent, well-educated, worldly people in Kazakhstan. I think that the program like the Bolshevik and et cetera, where the president, the leader of the nation, sent people out to Western worlds to open up Kazakhstan was a brilliant branding, okay? And be able to bring these people back, okay? That was a brilliant move. It was wonderful for nation branding. And it was also important for foreigners to be able to see somebody that they can understand. So they speak languages outside of Russian and Kazakh, and that understand the Western way of thinking so that we can have a narrative. Remember, it all comes down to narrative design, so we can have a narrative. If you went to a university in the United States, it's easier for an American to go, oh, okay. And the same thing in England and Europe, Singapore, whatever. So that's brilliant. But when you ask me about where to invest, the most interesting thing for an investor is to invest in a place where the risk premium can be managed. I'm going to pause now. Where the risk premium can be managed. Factors when it comes to investing into a foreign country come into play. Political stability. We did have an election. We do have a new president. Foreign currency volatility, right? And economic descriptions down to human capital. So when you're an investor and you can start with the risk premium and bring that risk premium down, the quality of investment goes up and so do the returns. Agreed? So the best thing that a country can do is two things: either come with a very low risk premium or help investors to bring that down. Now, I am not in favor of guarantees, because guarantees take away, except for exceptions, maybe, but guarantees allow investors to ignore that risk management. And you don't want that in a country. You want people to come with a solution. So for example, we've noticed in this pandemic that there was a lack of medicine for people that were ill. Agreed? That's what's been discussed. Now, that lack of medicine because there is no medicine, they weren't able to bring medicine in, or there was medicine, but they were not able to deliver that medicine. You see, as early as February, I made the board aware that I was concerned about COVID, and I was concerned that COVID was going to affect the supply chain, as well as obviously kill people. But that's as early as February, where we at the Development Bank started preparing for the impact of COVID in how it's going to affect the investments that we have, the operations of those investments, and also the people. We were ahead of the curve. So we were managing that risk, you see. So what's interesting is maybe medicine is, something that's interesting to be produced in the country. I know that there's been interest in investments for Pfizer, but maybe where you see shortages, where you see your vulnerabilities. That's very simple. Where was I vulnerable in the supply chain? Okay, because if something like this happens again, it affected my economy. So how can I minimize that and then promote that? Maybe it is producing medicines in the country. Maybe it is sponsoring investments in e-health. One of the things that people said was that, there was a shortages of doctors. Now, of course, you need doctors, right there. But maybe it is investing in nurses to become more like registered nurses, or for people that can't go through a whole medical degree, become what we have in America and in Europe, physician assistants, where they don't have to spend all that time in medical school, but they have enough technical training to help. And then when there isn't a pandemic, those people can go with e-medicine, and look at x-rays, and because you can, reflect, an x-ray even to a university in America or to Almaty or Nur Sultan. So the fact is, the only limitation the country has is a lack of focus. Whenever there is a shortage, this is what you want to invest in, because there's a demand. So let's help people to fulfill that demand.
It's true. It's a great potential.
Now, of course, no one has the cure for COVID, but in general, right? Minimizing your supply vulnerabilities should be an area of interest in promotion of investment for the government. It's easy, people get it, people understand. For example, food prices have skyrocketed, right? Even in America, they've skyrocketed. It's horrible. People that are poor are already dealing with less sanitation. They're already dealing with, crowded spaces. Now food prices go up. Ask yourself, why do food prices go up? In many cases, Kazakhstan imports, correct?
Yeah.
Well, let's stop that. And that starts with my conversation in every panel you've heard me speak in the Astana Forum and otherwise. I always talk about the Brazilian miracle of agrotech. Kazakhstan's black gold outside of extractable industries is agriculture. It has massive land. I know that sometimes the climate's not the best, but it does have a massive amount of beautiful country, right? With massive land. we should be investing in agrotech, things, technologies that are focused in Kazakhstan's reality and will help yield in terms of agriculture. And that's the miracle in the nutshell that helped Brazil. Brazil also said, no, I've got so much land, I don't have to invest, let's do things the old way. Then people said, no, 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 let's start investing. Let's make technologies. They became leaders. And now Brazilian companies that are not even public, private, have enough money to go buy out public companies in America, major public countries in America, right? So when you can control your supply, you're less vulnerable, right, to input risks. So this is something that you have to look at. Food security is a big deal. So tackle it. So focus on it. And if you can't create the inputs, then create something better. Find another food group, find something else, okay? So it's extremely important to think about sustainable agriculture, but it's even more important to think about sustainable agriculture that is driven by agrotech. And there are so many intelligent and well-educated people in Kazakhstan. I am sure if you gave them the money, the time to develop technologies, to partner with companies to develop technologies, Kazakhstan would have the second rebirth in its economy.
Thank you very much for your ideas. Next question is about contribution and development of human capital, especially women empowerment. Recently, you have been featured in Oxford Leadership Program. Was happy to see that, listened and watched your interview in the frame of this Oxford program. You delivered a very powerful message. Would you access the human resource development in Development Bank of Kazakhstan? What kind of instruments would you advise to develop internal human resources?
Thank you. I'm honored that you actually listened to that video as part of the online learning, right? One thing I will share a link for my TEDx that talks about empowering women, what women have to do to empower themselves and break barriers. I'll make it available for you after this interview. How about that? Okay. But one of the things that I talk about, and I think that's important, is that any leader needs to find their authentic voice. Okay. Women should lead as women, and they should not mimic male traits. Okay. If they are strong, if they are aggressive, don't be arrogant, right? Man or woman. Okay. Always pause to learn, always pause to listen so that you can make the best judgment in your leadership and have people follow you. Now, that's just leadership, man or woman. But this idea that a woman has to perhaps follow a man doesn't make sense, or that a man should discount a woman because she doesn't imitate him is also nonsense. Okay. So, but what I do want to say, which I think is most important, is about the reality of the Development Bank of Kazakhstan in terms of women. I am so happy to say, and I gotta pause. I am so happy to say that through all the chairmen of the management board that we've had, Mr. Desaev, Jean Michel, and now Mr. Sarkouros, all of them have been nothing but supportive in promoting women to leadership. You see, because many companies can say, oh no, over 50% of our employees are women. I said, yeah, but how many of those are actually in power, our decision-making? It's not to say there's 100 people and 60 are women. If they're just cleaning the floors or serving you coffee, no, okay? And what I've met are many women who are very well educated, right, that over the years have had problems getting placed, and there's no reason whatsoever, except for ideas that a woman's going to get married, she's going to have children. Well, that cultural thinking needs to move away. You should look at the best candidate. And I think that this pandemic is teaching people that you have to look at leaders in a new way. Because you can't go out and have drinks with your buddies and exclude somebody. Everyone's working from home and managing it. So it's not about who can show up in the office. So I think that people are going to have an awareness that these preconceptions that they have, which sometimes benefit their own agenda, doesn't really mean that she is not a leader or is not capable. It just means you're trying to create a narrative to preserve your own job. So we need to separate the concept of why people perpetuate certain falsities, women to men and men to women, and amongst women and men amongst men. But going back, I am so proud to work in an environment, in an institution that since I've been there has never impeded my suggestion and that of other independent board members. And I actually have to give a nod to the other independent board members who are also as passionate about promoting women, qualified women to positions. Since I've been on the board, we have made the head of compliance women, and these report directly to the board or to the audit committee. Heads of audit is a woman, reporting directly to the board and to the audit committee. The head of risk is a woman, and risk, very essential part of the management of the bank, okay? The corporate secretariat are women, reporting to the board, very instrumental. So we have put women, when it could have gone automatically to men, I said, well, wait a minute, do we have women candidates? And I have never gotten pushback from the board of directors. And I also want to give a nod to the Baiterek board members, right? Those representatives of Baiterek to DBK's board. Never have I had pushback in the idea, in the execution, in the collaboration with other independent board members to promote women in DBK to positions of seniority and decision-making. So to that, I say that DBK is probably a benchmark in the country. And I think it's an example that should be emulated. Okay, so wow, right? So that's important. I know that when we look to appoint people in other boards of the daughter countries of Baiterek, those that DBK has some oversight, it's now part of practice to find women when you present candidates that are qualified. So it's not an all male candidate, because we don't just go, oh yes, our board is very active. We're not rubber stamps. We question, we go this, we may disagree. That's what a board should do. And now it's practice, so it goes to human resources. It is practice that when human resources gives us candidates, it has to have women representation as well. Because then we can turn around and make good decisions. Now, some people will say that, how do you ascertain a good candidate? It's been proven over and over again that with diversity, you have better performance. If you hire people that think the same way as you do, you have a very narrow view. The more diverse the more diverse you have people in leadership and people coming up from leadership, okay? People being groomed to become leaders, the more diverse, knowledgeably diverse that skill set of potential is, the better performance you have. Because you want sustained performance, right? So when you want sustained performance, you should have diversity. And it's proven all over the world without question. And it also creates people to step up. Now, one of the things that we also have to do is we have to make sure, and every company needs to do this continuously, that when we bring in, entry-level people and juniors, that we, and I like to use what the Americans say, see them as athletes. You coach your professional input, your people, so that they can run faster, work better. I'm going to actually take a motto from the Air Force of the United States, since we're working with them. The idea is not to work harder, but to work smarter.
Yeah.
Work smarter, not harder. That is the United States Air Force model. And to do that, you need to lead the way in technology. Okay? Lead the way in technology. The pandemic has shown that everyone's working very well through video conference.
Yeah.
So old ideas that a woman can't show up to work because she has children or this or taking care of the family gets thrown out of the window because they're performing in this pandemic. So then you look at people, what is your excuse when you complain?
Yeah.
So I think that, I think that some women, like some men, tend to lack confidence. I think some women and men tend to be scared of progressing in the pressures, but that's not gender. That's personal. That's personality. No one would ever accuse me of that, right? No, ever.
Yeah.
I think that we should teach people in schools and in universities and in home that it's important to be a risk taker, but not be reckless. Two very different things. Take a risk, okay? I think it's important that people, when they're given the opportunity, even if they're not 100% sure that they can do it, do it. And then the institution helps them to develop. So I think that DBK has been doing a great job. I think the fact that DBK continues to have foreign, and when I say foreign, I mean really foreign board members, okay? People that love the country but live outside of the country so they can continuously bring different perspectives rather than people just that are foreign that live in the country and are therefore just encased in the culture. I think it's wonderful that they have that balance because that's diversity. Okay, that brings different views and different opinions and the ability to challenge in a constructive way. So I think DBK, I couldn't be prouder, is really taking that on board. I see Baiterek really supporting that. There's always room for improvement, always, but we always have to recognize when someone does something correctly and not let them just stop there, okay? Because that needs to continue and it needs to continue. And it's changing some people's minds, but as long as the leaders are saying the culture has changed, then people will follow.
My last question, it's not related only to DBK. I just read recently the article in The Economist. It was discussing these issues of working from home during the pandemic. And it had just very good messages on that companies should start trusting their employees. After this, if people understand that trust, they will perform better. Do you think that this pandemic will change the approach between the relationship of top management and employees, the way of their cooperation and communication?
Working with DBK remotely, I've seen the highest standard of professionalism, quite frankly. Okay, they're as prepared, as engaging, as forthcoming with information, and the debates are as, I would say, in depth, and the analysis, our questioning, what we request, as if we were an in-person, okay, meeting. Obviously, we miss seeing each other because we have one of the most amazing boards, and everyone likes everybody, and they really work hard, okay? Even if we agree to disagree with something, the level of professionalism is extraordinary, okay? And the collegiality is amazing. And that goes to trust. We all trust each other. We trust that we will continue to do our jobs as we should. There also has to be a difference between a manager that thinks that their employees are robots and they're only there to do technical things, staple this piece of document, go here. And an employer or manager that sees their people or hired a person that is a professional. So if you're a professional, you don't need to be babysat.
Yeah.
If you didn't hire a professional, that person will not do their job even if they're in person. And think about it as a manager. Why would I want to have somebody that I have to keep telling them what to do when they should know what to do? So it comes to your choice. It doesn't have to do with your remote or not remote. And in fact, in the United States, we're having another problem. People are working longer because no one knows what a weekend is anymore because all the days seem the same. So companies are now saying, please stop working. Please take Saturday and Sunday. Please turn off your computer at 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock. I'm doing that with my tech company. I'm telling people, I forbid you from, unless it's an emergency, to do any work on Saturday and Sunday, because I need you refreshed. Because we also know the pandemic takes a mental turn. People are working from home. They're getting, they're seeing loved ones sick or hearing about things. So there's an emotional aspect to it, and there's no break. It's not like you're going to the office, you're coming back, you're having tea with your friends so your mind can refresh, okay? It's hard to relax. So it's up to managers to realize that, okay? That there is a toll. Okay, people are losing loved ones, okay? Be respectful, be loving, be caring. That's part of being manager, okay? And at the same time though, however your employee, quite frankly, behaved in the office, I'm sure that that's how they're behaving in the remote environment. So it's not about the remote environment. A professional is a professional. A go-getter is a go-getter, okay? There are people that in this pandemic sat there and have been very upset. And there are people that took advantage of this pandemic and said, you know what, I'm going to do a lot of online courses and further my skill set. Opportunity is a state of mind and a choice. That's it. Okay, it's a state of mind and it's a choice. Many people, including myself, took on more online courses, learned greater skill sets, continued to be refreshed, and some people didn't. But guess what? Those are the same people that wouldn't do it if we weren't in a pandemic. So I don't think it's bringing out, I think it's a reflection of anything of the manager's choice of people. Did you choose correctly?
Yeah, so wise. A very good message. Thank you very much for sharing.
The last thing I'm going to include in terms of management is that something that I think is very important. We learned this when we did our Harvard training. Because DBK makes us have to go and continuously be top of the line as board members. It's extremely important for companies, cultures, institutions, and managers to create a psychologically safe environment. And psychological safety is not to be your employees or subordinates, therapists. That's not what we're talking about. Psychological safety is creating an environment where people can challenge ideas, where people can feel comfortable in giving ideas. Even if you're not a head of a chairperson of a department, even if you're the lowest person in your department, maybe they have a brilliant idea. And if you're not accessible for that person to give it, you're failing as a manager and you're failing your institution. Brilliance can come from everywhere. I want to thank you for this opportunity to have this chat with you.
Thank you. I think that it's not our last talk, the DBK talk, or any other talks. I hope that this pandemic will end soon, and you will come. Yeah, that you will come to Kazakhstan.
Can't wait.
Yeah. To the board meeting, and I would like to thank you very much for a good knowledge, for a nice positive vibes, for good advice, and your great ideas. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the opportunity. It's been wonderful to talk to you.
Thank you.
Be safe.
Yeah, you too. Take care of yourself.
Likewise.
Thank you. Thank you, Marcia.
Bye.
Have a good day. Bye.
Have a good night. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.